Welcome to Annex Cloud Market Movers, where we bring in experts and luminaries to help us with the current times. Today, I'm extremely excited to welcome Jason Asher from Kodella. Jason and I have known each other for a very long time. He's been in sort of the commerce, ERP, sort of a customer experience space for a very long time. So I'm very excited to welcome Jason. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Al. I don't think I've ever been called a luminary, so I'll take that as a compliment.
That's absolutely, and you are. And so, if we could start, Jason, just an introduction about a little bit about yourself, your background, and
Sure,
history, and your work at Kodella. That'd be great if we can start there.
sure. So hi, my name is Jason Asher. This is the 11th step of the 12-step program. Speaking to you today, Al. All right. So right now I'm vice president of commerce at Kodella. We are a startup out of Orange County, California. We primarily operate within the NetSuite ecosystem and some other ecosystems for omnichannel retail. Prior to that, I've held positions at Oracle NetSuite, where I ran global operations for the Commerce Agency program, ran the e-business strategy team at Venda. I think that's where you and I met. And then prior to that, I've held positions at Swatch Group, at Walt Disney Company, and then actually got my start in the retail business as a child. Working alongside my grandfather, and may he rest in peace on my father, their retail stores in Brooklyn. So, a lot of really interesting, kind of like bespoke experience that kind of comes together in the technology field.
That's great, and you've been on both sides of the table, so you have appreciation for what it is to be a retailer
Yeah,
from your family side, and then moved on the technology side. So you have an understanding of what technology is needed to solve
yeah,
real problems in the real world. If we start with, your experience coming from a DRP space, even though obviously NetSuite, you were running the commerce sort of practice or partnership practice there. NetSuite is a huge ERP play. And so, if I may ask a sort of question around, how ERPs are evolving or will evolve in this current decade, according to you. The evolution of what ERPs used to be back in the day around, having disparate systems and bringing it all together into one place. But what's the next evolution for ERPs as you see it, and how does customer experience have a role to play into it?
Okay, so I think the way that I think I see ERPs evolving, first of all, the notion of data migration, especially with the NetSuite ERP, is at such a matured level right now that you could be a retailer of any shape or size, B2C, B2B, whatever vertical you're in, and the data is going to land inside the NetSuite and be structured and then add value to the modules that you purchased, right? And then from there, because the data is so structured it's so strategically structured, if you will, by the NetSuite product teams, that's what enables horizontal and vertical scalability of businesses. So where this is going is that I believe you're going to see the NetSuite ERP and more retail brands, e-commerce brands, in the coming decade. But the real exciting piece, and I know you and I have conversations, one-on-one about this, is that I see ERP systems having a dramatic impact on small and medium businesses as the pandemic is going to start to subside and the world is going to start to kind of go through this kind of post-COVID phase. And what I mean by that is that I can clearly see how property owners are going to adopt ERP systems to enable small businesses to structure their data. Getting rid of the Quickens, getting rid of the QuickBooks, and just getting them on an ERP so that they could have their small businesses take advantage of modules and platforms like an Annex cloud to deliver loyalty or different payment processors, so they could actually compete with the bigger retailers to remain relevant within their small towns. And this, I believe, is going to start a revolution, if you will, to rebuild the small businesses in America and really across the world that were really hit by the pandemic. So I think what we're going to see is a really exciting revolution of small businesses kind of upping their game in terms of their brand touch with their customers, having ERP systems lead the way.
And that's great. And that's very unique proposition, because there's a huge market to be had, as you're saying, that will evolve because of this. And then when those small businesses now, through whatever consortium of
Yep.
products that they have the ability to understand their customers better, get the data together, they will be much more powerful than they are
Yes.
today in understanding their customers and serving their customers. So that's truly great. And the other thing that I know I'm very excited about that you've mentioned to me that I want to learn a little bit more about is, this focus on sort of customer experience and the evolution of customer experience. And we've been talking about this for a very long time, but you've been on three sides of the table. I shouldn't even say that the three sides of the table, but you've been on the retail side, you've been on the technology vendor side, and now you're on the services side, right? And so if that's coming in, what are you looking at it from a end retailer standpoint? How do you bring a great customer experience to life when you have the right technologies in place, whether it's NetSuite suite of products or Annex Cloud or anything else that solves the problem? You still have to put it together in a way
Yeah.
that solves the customer problem. How do you approach
Yeah.
that from a customer perspective?
Well, usually we just write down the logos on pieces of paper. We throw them in a cardboard box. We mix it up. We pull one out. Hey, that's what we're going to work on today. Uh, so I think that the most important part, Al, about how you're framing out this notion is that we take the time during the alignments to really grasp what the main thing is of the retail in the current state and the future state, right? What experience have they brought to the world that is successful, and then what experience do they want to continue to bring to the world when they go through their digital transformation, right? So now we're talking about not so much a feature functions arms race, but now we're talking about, you said, the experiential part of what's great about all these platforms and how they converge together. So our approach is called the Kodella CX framework, where we start with our stack of record, where we identify the vendors that are needed to bring the vision to life. And that's really the moment in time where the feature functions discussions are going to be laid to rest, and we're going to start to craft the experience. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to talk about the data experience, how to structure the data from these disparate platforms into the suite. And then from there, going into the ERP, getting the data, into the different modules, getting the workflows defined, getting the workflows down. And now that all of that has settled during the development process, now we're going to talk about the brand experience. Now we're going to talk about what got you here, okay? And once we talk about what got you here, how are we mapping that within the ERP based upon the structured data? And then once that is mapped as a brand experience, now we're going to talk about omnichannel, right? So omnichannel is where now we're going to enter into a phase where, hey, loyalty becomes part of that critical path, because with loyalty mixed in and blended with the data that ERP systems like NetSuite has, the amount of associations that you can make for, uncovering who your best customers are, who your frequent buyers are, when is their birthday, how you can reach out to them. Loyalty now becomes an omni-channel associate. It becomes an omni-channel associate based upon how you can communicate bidirectionally with your customer, but then also the product feedback you can get, right? So then as you float that up through the value-added experience, now you have a touch point online, in-store, different touch points at kiosks, potentially in malls or whatnot. But every single touch point, you're going to know your customer, you're going to know how loyal they are, you're going to get them to have potentially more interactions with the brand, and then from those other interactions with the brand, really get them on a great path, so that that relationship is constantly going to grow. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to analyze the data experience, ERP experience, brand, omnichannel, value-added experience as part of this CX framework, so that we could really figure out opportunities and innovations post-live to segment within those experience verticals. And of course, loyalty then not only begins with omnichannel, now it spreads across brand, now it spreads across value add, then ultimately into the ERP when we're talking about CRM and other points of distribution, for the products themselves.
That's great. And one of the things I really like, if I had to synthesize in a way for me, would be, you've had in this framework of things, you've got technology platforms like NetSuite or Annex Cloud and others, and you've got the customers and the problem, and you've got, essentially Kodella helping them in between. And then before, an old sort of school scenario, the service teams would be thought of as implementation partners. So I want to implement ERP, I'll bring them in, that's great. But the missing two blocks that you're bringing in with the CX framework for me, one is the strategy part, which is tying in the technologies and the customer problem and a strategy,
Right.
and figuring out really how we can provide that solution. And
right.
Secondly, the go-to-market, because these technologies are integrated in a way that the go-to-market's much faster once you've figured
right.
out that
right.
the solution to your problem is solved by these different things, putting that together.
Right.
So
Right.
having that seamless sort of piece from the customer journey or customer problem, the customer journey to the implications on that journey and what needs to be there to the technologies that play in there, and then go to market and actually launching them. So that whole middle layer is a pretty wide one, and I think that's
Yeah.
you're solving that with the CX framework, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Christian,
And to Al, to your point, that middle layer, that's becoming the critical path right now. So regardless of the feature function that you think you need, the actual execution on the ground of that layer could go through multiple iterations, right? We at Kodella, we put together our roadmaps. We believe that everything goes according to plan. This is going to happen. Probably 50% of the time it does, because the world is moving so quickly, and innovation becomes really one of the paramount core tenets of the deployment right now. That, yeah, sometimes we're delayed a couple of weeks, admittedly we are, but if that customer goes live after we get that innovation in, with whatever module it involves, and then they go live and they're like +1 or +2% conversion rate, and their business is growing, their content interactions are growing, their loyalty interactions are growing, those couple of weeks that we were able to provide that level of innovation, that's what's going to push that business forward. That's what's going to deliver on the promise of all the different sales decks that all these guys have seen, and all these pre-sales or whatever. The main thing of when that actually happens, like you said, Al, when we come in and we have all these disparate nodes that we're putting together in the framework, that becomes the main thing of operationalizing the vision, either through an MVP with multiple phases or through a big bang. But that's becoming the main thing now in the world of how brands are going to be able to push themselves forward, into the future.
that's great. And the second part of what you mentioned, which I liked before as well, was around the case of loyalty, sort of tying in those things together. But I do want to get your viewpoint a little bit on how end customers may want to perceive retention and loyalty as a tactic in the upcoming times. I'll tell you sort of what we're seeing, right, a little bit as a context to get your thoughts. In a booming market, marketers may always think and say, it's less expensive to retain a customer than it is to acquire a customer. But the reality is, as a marketer, you're always trained to think acquire, 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 right? All of us as businesses, we all want to acquire new customers, right? That's always the name of the game. How much new business did you get? And in a challenging market like we are now, you start really thinking about loyalty and retention. And one of the things we saw from a study that was done in 2008, the last sort of session, where Catalina Marketing did the study, and they found that they did a study of over 685 top brands, Cokes, Pepsi, Samsung of the world, and over 30 million customers. And they found that in 2009, 52% of the most loyal customers of all these brands had defected. Some of them had defected because of price, some had defected because of unavailability of buying, some had defected for some other reason, but that's a major defection that had happened. And the brands that focused on retaining those customers proactively came out of that recession much faster. So that concept of, hey, you should now think of doing this for the next few years is much more important.
Yeah.
But do you think, other than the technology aspect of it, but from a conceptual perspective, when you think of loyalty and retention, how do you foresee companies thinking about that in the next few years as they're coming out of where we are in now?
Well, I believe that loyalty is going to play a pivotal role in product development. So my perception, based upon our customers and based upon the customers that I've been able to work with over the years, is that when manufacturers, brands are able to match how they're developing products in terms of a relevancy and a resonance to the market, even if they're bringing something new to market, how they're making their customers' lives better, and then how loyalty programs are reinforcing how they're able to add to their lives. So, for example, right? Let's say we have two use cases, which I think were phenomenal, Al. When you have a booming economy, when you release a new product, you could wait a little while because you're still getting traction from what's already in the market. So there's more of a story, there's more of a buildup. Where we're going through recessions now, the manufacturers, the people who run these brands, now they have to adapt. So adaptability of product development and adaptability of brand perception is going to be as much about the strength of their position in the market with loyalty. Because if their position in the market isn't that strong, but they offer the best product, the loyalty programs can help them get that product into the world and get word of mouth going. Those who are in a position where they don't believe innovation is needed, or they've already reached the pinnacle of something, those that stand still, especially right now, they're done. They're done, and there's no hope. Those that are going to adapt, and those that are going to adapt strategically with landing pages, with loyalty, with a purpose, to your point, Al, those are the ones who are going to emerge with brute strength and be able to take over entire markets that maybe they were very small fish in. So my perception is that brands that are able to talk about how their products can adapt to the current market, the current lifestyle, is going to be the critical path. Now, case in point, if we look at exercise brands, those who make home equipment, the Pelotons of the world, the manufacturers that make home weights, that home workouts. Now that the pandemic hit, you can't go to the gym. All of a sudden, if you're this little brand, somewhere in Ohio that's just making yoga mats, all of a sudden everybody in America needs your yoga mat because they can't go to the gym. So now enter that traction with a loyalty program, getting the feedback of your product, adjusting your product based upon the feedback, releasing new things, building that loyal customer base, showing your customers that you're listening and that you're doing something about what you're listening to. It's so simple. It's dead simple, man. Right. And again, the loyalty piece of that, allowing not only you to be rewarded, but allowing your friends to participate, that then becomes part of the critical path for sustaining the growth and be able to turn a small brand into a major brand, post recession. So I could easily see the why of why Annex Cloud is going to be there and why you're going to contribute to it. But it's also a reciprocal relationship that these brands and manufacturers have to know that they need to pivot and adapt, because what worked then, even after the pandemic blows over, if you're just thinking that, hey, after everything ends, it's going to go back to normal, it's not. The world is going to change. Brands are going to change. And it's going to be interesting to see who emerges as a result. But yes, it's a much about product development and those that are in these brands that realize what they need to do, coupled with a strong ERP, strong commerce and strong loyalty. That those kind of four touch points is the why behind why these brands will emerge with strength coming out of the recession that we're in right now.
That's great. That's fabulous insight, and I think that from a product perspective, that made me think a lot as well. So that's great. One of the things I also wanted to sort of get your feedback on today is, innovation in the B2B world, and the reason I say that is the B2C space, when it comes to customer experience, when it comes to e-commerce, when it comes to loyalty, they've been thinking about it for a few more years than the B2B
Right.
world has.
Right.
The B2B world has been disrupted with this pandemic as much or even more than the B2C world has, in many capacities, right? Distributions, their sellers, the impact that their buyers are having, so on and so forth. And there's a lot more that needs to be done in the B2B world when it comes to customer experience, e-commerce, and loyalty, that we're very excited about on the loyalty side, especially on the B2B side, and that sort of it. What's your take on the B2B world and how it needs to adapt in terms of customer experience, e-commerce, and loyalty in the next few years?
That's actually a phenomenal question, because we're going through that with a lot of our customers now. And especially the notion of stickiness when you have high volume businesses like those who make plumber parts, those who make hoses and fasteners and all sorts of like HVAC parts or even cigar accessories, and the thing is, it's like the mountains is actually the slope is actually more slippery, if I can use that analogy, in the B2B world versus the B2C world. Because with B2B, the repetitive nature of purchasing is at a much higher level than B2C. So the notion of stickiness from that distribution point, whether a manufacturer or a distributor, that is now at risk. right? That's now more at risk than it ever was, Al, to your point. Logistic disruptions, et cetera, et cetera. So now entering loyalty to that, what's very exciting for us, I think, at Kodella, is that approaching our customers with the notion of the loyalty in the B2B, it enables brands to be able to, I don't want to use the word compensate, but enables B2B brands themselves and manufacturers and distributors to be able to offer a value-added experience of saying, listen, there was a logistics disruption. We're very sorry, but because you're a loyal customer of ours, we're going to send you a mug. We're going to give you 10% off your next purchase. We're going to do something to help you so that although your end customer is upset, we're going to do everything we can to support you. And I think that up until this moment in time, yes, there were efficiencies with my account. There were efficiencies with price levels, all these ERP things, which is wonderful. But now that contractors, HVAC, engineers, those who are actually in the field services industry who need parts immediately, they're the ones now that are dictating a market, whereas the market used to be dictated by the manufacturer. Now, entering the notion of loyalty to bring the stickiness, are they going to retain 100%? No. Could they retain 60 to 70%, which I believe is going to be the success factor? I think it's possible. And then with that loyalty, now they're also able to offer their customers other incentives from other brands that they work with, and then from there create a whole ecosystem of things that would make one infrastructure of where you get your parts from and what distributors you use better than a different infrastructure, because of the fact that they're able to offer these incentivized loyalty-based programs. So I think that the days are very nascent, the very early days to your point, but I could easily see how loyalty and the B2B part of loyalty it could be 2 to 3x the size of B2C, just based upon how competitive loyalty is going to make the retention of contractors and plumbers and HVAC repair folks to these distributors. So I think we haven't even, I don't even think we've seen innovations yet, on the level that Annex Cloud is capable of. So if anything, as a partner, I'm looking forward to see what Annex Cloud comes up with, because I don't even think we scratched the surface of what a B2P loyalty program really is. I think we're so early on with what that notion can ultimately become in the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely. And I think we can't agree more. And it's one of the things that we're constantly thinking about, our product teams, our customer success teams, and talking to our customers, because there's a big frontier to be had on that side.
Yeah.
And there's a big problems to be solved on that side as well.
And now to give you just one example, like we're talking to a company right now in Miami that goes from Miami up to Palm Beach, and they basically manufacture HVAC supplies, right? They want to be able to use the side door of their warehouses throughout South Florida to have contractors come to pick up their parts. So how loyalty drives behavior of more efficient behaviors of distribution of product, if you can imagine. Come to the side door, show us your iPhone or your phone, show us your ID number, get you your order, you just got 20 points, right? So now loyalty is helping influence the behaviors of how to have operational efficiencies implemented into distribution businesses. And that's just a small use case. So again, it's so exciting right now to see what's going to come of this. But just as an example of what we're seeing in the marketplace, it's like, how do you drive the change management within your customer base for B2B? And again, we at Kodella really do view loyalty as one of the critical paths, to seeing that execution happen.
Absolutely. And I think the last part that you mentioned is really where our core focus is. It's all about the customer experience. It's about the customer journey. It's about changing the journey or influencing the journey along the way. And it's less about, incentives. It's less about discounts. It's less about, benefits, but what can you do to understand their journey and
Right.
their journey and improve their journey?
Right.
And through the use of a program, which we now call loyalty program. So it's not like the old school ways of thinking about points,
Right.
what have you, but it's more about customer experience, customer journey improvement, and
Right.
impact. And you nailed it on that one. I think that's really the next frontier for where loyalty is going. Jason, this was a great conversation. I know we can keep going on these, but I know we've provided a tremendous amount of value to our common users here. I really want to thank you for joining us today. For everyone else, if you want to watch some more of these videos, go to annexcloud.com/marketmovers. And thank you again, Jason, for joining us.
Al, my friend, I thank you for having me. Continued success to yourself and your customers in 2021, and looking forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.